you'll learn about where we've been, what we've done, and opportunities for the future. Just a brief Zoom webinar note. While you, our attendees and audience, will be muted so that the presenters may be heard clearly, and only the speakers and presenters will actually be visible, your questions and comments are important and welcome, and may be typed into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand side under your screen at any time. They'll be addressed, or at least some of them, as best as we can as time allows, a bit later in the program, and or individually by email or other means. You are also always welcome to send questions via our email address and or our Facebook page. So let me tell you a bit about our CWC story. More than 30 years ago, a small group of lake lovers, naturalists, biologists, fisher people, business people, and others came together out of a profound concern for the ecological and economic health and future of Chautauqua Lake and other areas as well. Way back then in the late 1980s, concerns centered on the accelerating loss of sensitive and ecologically valuable natural shorelands around the lake and the uncontrolled erosion, sedimentation, nutrient loading, and other problems in the watershed, leading to intensifying weed and algae growth and other undesirable impacts on water quality. Sound familiar? But no one else then was addressing these issues at that time. We met in living rooms and kitchens and envisioned an organization that would protect these special places and their gifts through conservation, education, and technical guidance, and would engage others in preventive approaches in better protecting and more holistically managing our waterways. We determined that our mission would be to preserve and enhance the water quality, scenic beauty, and ecological health of the lakes, streams, wetlands, and watersheds of the Chautauqua region. Our logo, designed by the late Al Cala, would be the belted kingfisher, a beautiful native bird which watches over the water and represents us well. John Jablonski, Becky Albaugh, Al Cala, and I became the founding incorporators, and attorneys Bob Van Every and Judith Clare filed our not-for-profit incorporation papers in 1990. In 1995, thanks to a generous donor, the beautiful 100-acre Dobbins Woods became our very first preserve. And dreaming big, we set our sights on major land conservation campaigns to conserve the Cheney Farm Lakeshore, Stowe Farm Lakeshore, Lutheran Camp Shoreline, wetlands at the mouth of Prendergast Creek, and the forested wetlands at the mouth of Goose Creek. All 5 campaigns were successfully completed, thanks to the amazing community of members and donors who contributed to these efforts. Our dedication to our mission continues today, and of course, 30 years later, we celebrate the conservation of 31 preserves, protecting over 1,000 acres of beautiful natural places all across Chautauqua County. None of this would have been possible without you, our friends, volunteers, donors, and grant partners, along with our talented and amazing staff led by our longtime visionary leader and executive director, John Jablonski, and our dedicated board of directors, both past and present. For all of you, we are grateful. Let me now quickly recognize and thank our wonderful staff who do all kinds of behind the scenes magic, and some of whom you'll be seeing and hearing from a bit later. Tracy Carlson is our outreach assistant and webinar tech guru for tonight and all of our Zoom meetings. Whitney Gleason, water quality program manager. Jill Eklund, director of operations. Carol Markham, conservationist and Lakescapes consultant. Jeremy Wolson, conservation lands manager. And of course, John Jablonski III, our executive director. I also want to recognize Dick Johnson, our bookkeeper, and our attorney, Dana Lumberg, for their service as well. Thank you to everyone. Additional recognitions and accolades go out to our dedicated officers and board directors. They are Craig Seeger, Vice President, Co-Chair of the Conservation Committee and Construction Crew Chief Extraordinaire. He's the one behind all those bog bridges and wonderful trails and places where the trails are made more accessible on our preserves due to his incredible dedication to that work. Dr. Mike Jabat, Secretary and Alliance Liaison for the last year. Bob Wooler, Treasurer and Chair of the Finance Committee. Directors, Dennis Collins, Judy Maskery, Cheryl Mulwiney, Debbie Moore, Deb Treffs, Caitlin Whalen, Dr. Jean Wabenga, and Directors Emeriti Bill Locke, Mike Lyons, Tom Small, and Dr. Art Webster. Again, our deepest thanks go out to all of you for serving CWC, for your time, your talent, your treasure, and your passion for the mission and work of our organization. Finally, special thanks and recognition go out to our retiring board member, Judy Maskery, who has completed her term and is stepping down. Judy has provided incredible energy, inspiration, creative ideas, organizational skills, and valuable leadership in serving as past secretary and in chairing both our development and personnel committees. Judy, we will so surely miss you. As a small token of our appreciation for your service, you will be receiving a special framed and matted print of our beautiful Chautauqua Creek Oxbow Preserve, as shown hopefully by Craig and photographed by Jean Wabenga, but we'll get it to you.
Yeah, this is it. Jean took the picture, and Dan down at Frame and Glass in Jamestown made a beautiful mat and frame for it. A little reflection, but it is a beautiful thing.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah.
And thank you again, Judy, for your service and for all you've done for the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. Okay, now it's time to turn our attention to our 30-year accomplishments, 2019 and 20 activities report, future projects, and other key work to be presented by our Executive Director, John Jablonski, and our staff. Take it away, John.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you tonight. I wish I could be with you in person, and hopefully we can do that soon in the future. Becky already went over our mission, and our grantors for 2020, our major grantors for 2020 are the Chautauqua Lake and Watershed Management Alliance, the Chautauqua County, Chautauqua Region Community Foundation, the Lene Foundation, and the Rockwell Foundation. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy was formed in 1990. In the early 90s, we began with educational programs. Some of them were called Don't Feed the Weeds. We had wetland education programs, and we started the Shed Sheet newsletter, which was cut and pasted and glued to sheets of paper originally. We were a bunch of individuals coming together to pool their energy and resources for conservation. There's an underlying premise under most of what drives what the Conservancy does, and that is that land use and land cover drives water quality. We know from research that has been done that in order to deliver clean waters for drinking and for recreation, for clean streams and clean lakes, we need to keep a minimum of 70% of our watersheds in forests to deliver clean water for drinking and recreational use. On the left, we have a forested watershed. On the right, we have an area in West Ellicott, Lakewood. That's the Wegmans Kmart area. You can see how close it is to the lake. That has a lot of impervious surfaces as rooftops and streets and parking lots. And when the rain falls, it drops pollutants from the air in it onto the pavement. It picks up whatever's on the pavement and it dumps that all very quickly into the lake. And it's not surprising that the areas of the lake with the most challenging plant and algae conditions are those that have a lot of pavement in the contributing watershed above them. Water quality and water treatment costs are directly correlated to forest cover in the watershed. So we know that what we do on the landscape really drives whether we have healthy waters. Healthy landscapes produce healthy waters. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy is a county-wide organization. This is a map of the watersheds of Chautauqua County, and you can see the big heavy red line. That's the continental divide between the Lake Erie North Atlantic watershed and the Gulf of Mexico, Ohio Basin drainage below it. So you can see we have many sub-watersheds in the region. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy has a county-wide mission. Our first focus was to save the Chautauqua Lake shorelands because they were under severe development pressure in the 1980s and early 1990s when we formed. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, along with its educational activities, began working on conserving land. And in 1995, we had our first two acquisitions. We had the Dobbins family. Mr. Dobbins donated land in memory of his father, Harry Dobbins, who was the first New York State forester for our region. This is 100 acres of forest land on the top of Bly Hill, and that was the first property we acquired. The second property we acquired was 83 acres in the Elm Flats wetland on Lawson Road in the town of Chautauqua. Also around the same time, the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy opened its office at the Two Mansion on Main Street in downtown Jamestown. Through the generosity of the Gebbe Foundation and the interest of Paul Sullivan of the Gebbe Foundation at the time, we were able to get seed funding from the Gebbe Foundation starting in 1993 and running through about 2001, which really helped us get going. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, as Becky mentioned, identified 5 sites originally that it wanted to preserve that it thought were really important to the future of the lake. And in 1996, we led a bipartisan effort on the Chautauqua County Legislature to pass a motion stating that the Chautauqua County Legislature endorsed the conservation of Chautauqua Lake's few remaining undeveloped shoreline sites, and the state is requested to utilize environmental funds to conserve all that was remaining. This resolution gave a green light for the state to get involved in the conservation of the Cheney Farm Lakeshore and the Stowe Farm Lakeshore sites. And subsequently in 1998, after lots of work with people like Erik Kulleseid and others in the Trust for Public Land and Jerry Michael of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and lots of meetings on John Cheney's front porch and lots of meetings all around the county with John Cheney, the state of New York was convinced to purchase the first chunk of the Cheney Farm, which is right across from the main Cheney Farm here. And over 6 years, the rest of this entire lakeshore was purchased by the state of New York. It's 0.6 of a mile of shoreline and it's 34 acres. We calculated that thousands and thousands of acres of topsoil would have been lost had that area been developed for housing. So that was a very important acquisition which the Conservancy facilitated. In 1997, the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy purchased the Prendergast Creek wetlands at the mouth of Prendergast Creek, right near the fish hatchery and Snug Harbor Marina. The state of New York owns the north side of the mouth of the creek, and the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy owns the south side of the creek. We then proceeded to look at the outlet of Chautauqua Lake, and this area is an amazing place. The state's open space plan calls it an ecological oasis. In 1999, the Conservancy made its first purchase of land on the outlet, and over subsequent years, we've managed to conserve 0.7 of a mile of the shoreline of that outlet on the north side in the town of Ellicott. We own 83 acres of waterfront land down there, and our intent is to conserve that land from Fluvanna down to Jamestown and have an extension of Jamestown's Riverwalk through that property on the old rail bed all the way to Fluvanna in the future. Another purchase that came along in 1999 was from the Houssaig and Anderson families, and we purchased 150 acres at South Stockton, which is our largest preserve. This site was done in collaboration with the USDA NRCS Wetlands Reserve Program. The federal government paid 75% of the fair market agricultural value of this site, and the Conservancy paid 25% to purchase this property. And it took us 2 years to make the payments to conserve this site. And it's a really wonderful area with about a mile of Cassadaga Creek flowing through it and just about 125 acres of amazing wetlands. In 2001, we worked with the Stowe family, actually longer than that, probably over about 3 years. And the Stowe family signed an agreement with the Conservancy to purchase their lakeshore, which was about 1,200 feet, about 18 acres on the shoreline there. And right after we signed the contract to buy this, 9/11 hit, and New York State grants were frozen, and it became kind of a very terrifying experience because the Conservancy had just committed to a purchase over $800,000, and suddenly everything in the world had changed. So it was a wild time, and in 2002, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation simultaneously closed with the Conservancy, and we were able to conserve this very wild lakeshore with the state of New York. The Conservancy raised over $100,000 as a partner in the purchase of that site. Following that, the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy worked with the Lake Chautauqua Lutheran Center and the upstate New York Lutheran Synod to purchase a conservation easement on 900 feet of shoreline. This is very steep shoreline, wooded shoreline on the north side of the Lutheran Center. And we were able to purchase an easement on this property, which was a huge win-win situation because we got this forest conserved. The camp could continue using it for their camp activities without developing it any further, and provided great income to the camp in order to keep that camp healthy and an asset to the region and to the local economy. In 2004 and 2005, the Conservancy got involved with trying to save Midway Park when it came on the market. I worked very closely with Dalton Burgett, who was on the Regional Commission of the Parks of New York State Parks at the time, and we put together a proposal and documentation and took that around Western New York and the state and to the State Parks Office in Albany to try to get the state parks and the state government involved in purchasing this property and retaining it as a historic amusement park. Fortunately, we were successful and were able to get that done in 2005, and we felt like we overcame all odds to get that done. Much of the Conservancy property has been donated to us, and in 2005, Jay Stratton donated land to us in the headwaters of Chautauqua Creek, the East Branch Chautauqua Creek Preserve, which we affectionately call it the Beaver Swamp, as you can see in the picture in the middle. And this is a beaver tooth being shown by Mr. Galvin to these children who were on the tour that day. In 2014, Jay Stratton donated more acreage on Chautauqua Creek. He donated land around his cabin, which gave us a chunk of the gorge and wonderful forest land that's known as our Oxbow Preserve. And that has been developed into one of our most beautiful preserves with a walking trail that takes you down to the lake, down to the creek. So we thank Jay for his amazing generosity in establishing these two preserves and providing wonderful places for all of us to enjoy. 2008, Alan Hendrickson donated land, and we purchased land from a property owner up there to establish the Randy Allen Hendrickson Preserve between Hunt Road and Fairmont Avenue. This land was slated for commercial development, and it was very swampy, and it had a Lake Erie, Chautauqua Lake tributary flowing through it into Burtis Bay, and it would have been a disaster for the lake had that been developed. And we were fortunate to get a grant from Kathy Young and New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to purchase this site. Subsequently, Alan Hendrickson donated additional land to it, and Kathy Hall and Dennis Franklin also donated additional land to enlarge this preserve. Goose Creek was whoops, got a little ahead of myself there. Goose Creek was our fifth site that was on our original list to conserve on Chautauqua Lake, the wonderful wetlands at the mouth of the creek, which you can see on the left, that's the creek mouth. And we worked with the Loomis family to acquire the 30 acres from 394 down to the lake between the creek and Asheville Bay Marina. And we acquired that in 2011. And again, we partnered with the USDA NRCS with a wetland reserve program for us to pay 25% of the fair market value of the property and them to put an easement on it for 75% of the fair market value. And that went ahead, and it included a wetland restoration element, which created the ponds that you see now from next to our parking lot there. And in 2015, with the help of Art and Carol Webster and the Bowmans and the JCC Earth Awareness Club and other donors, an osprey nesting platform was constructed. That was 2015, and that osprey nesting platform sat vacant and sat vacant and sat vacant. And finally, in spring of 2020, the ospreys came to reside there. And I thank Jean, who is very well, I think, taken over 1,000 photos of the construction of the nest and the rearing of this osprey. And the osprey you see here on the right is the fledged young osprey that has now flown the nest. And we are just so excited that that property, which at one point, probably about 40 years ago, was a potato field, is now home to this osprey family. So that preserve is really a story of conservation and restoration, and now benefiting the wildlife of the area. Also at that site were 2 very large billboards right next to the creek. And when the Conservancy purchased the property, we were able to terminate the lease with the billboard company and remove those billboards. And in its place, we now have a kayak launch, which soon will be getting a much improved aluminum launch through a grant from the county. Ted and Deborah First have been involved with the Conservancy for a couple of decades and have been very, very involved supporters of the organization. And Ted served on our board, and Ted donated property to the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy in 2012, a beautiful site on Big Inlet, which added to the lands that we own on Big Inlet, north of Chautauqua Lake. Big Inlet is has the largest wetland complex of contributing water to Chautauqua Lake, and Ted First and Deb First played a role in helping the Conservancy to enlarge its holding in this largest wetland tributary to the lake. In 2012, we took a really big leap of faith, and we went after funding in a campaign to acquire 3.6 acres across from Long Point in an area known as Sandy Bottom, where people like to tie up and enjoy the Chautauqua Lake in their boats and stand out in the water in the shallow Sandy Bottom area. And we were very fortunate that the New York State Office of Parks approved our grant in 2012, and we were able to acquire that property and keep that as a public site for public use. And it's a wonderful forest with wetlands in it and streams, and very peaceful place most of the year, in a very busy place on beautiful days in the summer. In 2016, the Audubon Community Nature Center decided that it no longer wanted to own its Bentley Sanctuary in Ellicott. And we were fortunate to work with Kurt Westrom and the Westrom family and Audubon and others to receive a memorial donation in memory of Pamela Westrom, which funded the transfer of the sanctuary from Audubon to the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. The memorial donation that was made enabled the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy to establish the Pamela Westrom Wildflower Trail there and make numerous improvements to the site to improve the access for all of you, our donors, to enjoy, and the public. And you can see here, we had a problem with the main bridge there. A flood twisted it beyond repair. And thanks to the generosity of the Westrom family, we were able to replace that bridge with a more permanent, long-lasting structure and numerous other improvements there. So that's one very big example of a family making a memorial contribution and really having an impact, a benefit for the public on our Conservancy preserves. I can't emphasize enough how important those major gifts and memorial gifts are. Also at that site, the Wright family donated land to enlarge the preserve beyond what we received from Audubon. So that preserve is now bigger than it originally was, and we're very excited to see the use that that property is getting. In 2016 to 2018, we had a flurry of land donations to the Conservancy. Dan and Shauna Anderson donated the Browns Creek Preserve north of Bemis Point. Dennis Galucki and Barbara Mearswa donated land on Sea Lion Drive, Wallen Road in the town of Chautauqua near Hartfield in the Big Inlet watershed. And Mrs. Natsker donated her beautiful forest on Route 474 west of Asheville to the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, honoring her husband. And that's just a beautiful place now to visit. This waterfall is part of that site. And William Wendell Fletcher donated his family's land on Sunset Drive, across the road up Sunset Drive, south of the Sunset Valley Golf Course, to the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, as well down in that area, south of Southwestern Drive. Beautiful properties and wonderful wildlife habitat and wonderful places to visit. And while all that was going on, we've been cooperating very closely with the Cassadaga Lakes Association. We've got a wonderful group of active people in Cassadaga and with the Cassadaga Lakes Association who've been very involved with the Conservancy to try to save undeveloped lands around Cassadaga Lake. And starting in 2003, the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, with the help of people like Peter George and others, helped us to acquire 12 acres to establish the Fern Island Wetland Preserve, which separates the middle Cassadaga Lake from the lower Cassadaga Lake. And subsequently, since then, the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy received other donations. The Strait family donated the Mary Strait Bird Sanctuary, which is right next to Lilydale. And the Johnson family, Richard Johnson, donated the Johnson Bird Sanctuary on the outlet of Cassadaga Lake, 40 acres there. And then this past January 2020, the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy was able to acquire the proposed site of the Cassadaga Lakes Nature Park, which is 76 acres of some of the most beautiful waterfront land in Chautauqua County. We applied and were awarded a $90,000 New York State Parks Acquisition Grant for this purchase. We have a wonderful team of volunteers led by Nancy Wickmark at Cassadaga Lake, who have been very active in fundraising and volunteering to cut trails in and help us with lots of work there. Great bunch of people involved in that project. That project is moving along. We have other grant money out there that we've applied for to help us with the improvements, which we hope will come through at some point here. And we are also continuing to run the campaign for that site to try to create a substantial endowment fund to make sure that this park can be properly maintained and well kept in perpetuity long after all of us are gone. So I encourage people to get involved with that project. You can see the video of that on our website. It's pretty cool. And we thank all the people in the community who have been involved in that campaign. We have a conservation committee. This was a picture of most of the people on the committee in 2018. Our conservation committee has two main purposes. They advise the Conservancy on scientific issues, and they also help us identify whether or not the properties that we potentially may acquire through donations or purchases meet our conservation criteria. They advise the board on those matters, and then they help us identify what's living on proposed lands that we're conserving and help us prepare management plans for those properties. So people like Twan Leenders and Terry Mosher and Jan Bowman and lots of other people are involved, and the group has grown since this picture was taken. And we really appreciate all the time they put in to provide scientific advisement to the Conservancy and to help us manage our preserves in a scientifically valid way. This is a list of major grantors from over the last 30 years. The Gebbe Foundation was our major funder for the first 10 years, getting us off the ground. Sheldon Foundation has given us many grants over the 30 years, both for land acquisition and for educational programs. And we have many other foundations that have been involved along the way in various campaigns and covering costs for many things. The Chautauqua County has been a supporter for many years. Chautauqua Lake and Watershed Management Alliance. The New York State Conservation Partnership Program has been a funder of the Conservancy since about 1995. their first grant helped along with the Gebby grant to hire our first executive director back in the early days. So they've been with us a long time. And we've raised over $140,000 through that program over the 30 years. I'd like to highlight that you, our donors, have leveraged $9.5 million in state investment in open space in outdoor recreation in our region. You know, these projects, the Cheney Farm and the Stowe Farm Lakeshore, the Outlet Greenway, these are things that we couldn't have done without using the money from our donors to leverage state grants and state purchases. So it's been a fantastic return on investment for our donors to get this help from the state to acquire these sites that were important, very important in our region. I'd like to thank our members and donors. We've had over 3,000 families and individuals, donors and businesses over the last 30 years contribute to the organization. The donors of our 510 acres of our 1,043 acres, 23 sites have been donated to us that are now our preserves. That's a lot of donated land, and we really appreciate those landowners who had it in their hearts to keep their properties wild. So we thank those people. And again, I'd like to thank our major donors because their contributions. We have donors, some donors who give us 5,000, some will give us 10, sometimes they give us 15, sometimes it's 30, depending on the special needs we have for sites such as the Stowe Farm and the Lake Chautauqua Lutheran Center. We needed to come up with a match to apply for funds to start the position of the lands manager, and these people really came through for us to provide the local match we needed to hire a lands manager and do a lot of things. So our buffer programs was seeded with major grants. A lot of the things that we're able to do today or that we are seeing results of are because of major donors who took it upon themselves to contribute for special projects and make sure they got done. So that's a great way to get involved if you really want to have an impact that you can see a year or two down the road in our local area. That's a great way to get involved with the Conservancy. I also want to thank the families of all those people who have given us planned gifts and memorial gifts. Those have had a major impact in making sure that we are financially stable as an organization and that we have funds to carry our properties and make sure our properties are well maintained in the future. So those are a wonderful thing that you can do for us, for your preserves and for the organization to make sure that your conservation interests go long beyond your time here with us on Earth. Volunteers are a really important part of our activities. They really amplify what we can get done, and many times over. We have relied on so many volunteers over this 30 years. This is the Osprey, one of the Osprey platforms going up. Bob Carbacca was one of the major constructors of those platforms. People like Dick Rose has been fantastic. Johnny Mack, John Antonovich, Craig Seeger. These people really have put a lot of time in to make our preserves what you enjoy today. We've had a long partnership with Cummins, and their Jamestown engine plant has given labor to us pretty much annually for probably about 15 years. And they come out with teams to our preserves. Much of what you see in walkways and bridges at our preserves like Dobbins Woods and Bentley and other places has been constructed by Cummins employees on their community days. And Cummins also gave the Conservancy a $23,000 grant a couple of years ago to help with these activities, to help us implement our Gateways to Nature program to open up your nature preserves for you to use. So big thanks to Cummins and all they've done for the Conservancy as a partner in these activities. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy works through private individuals. We can only conserve a small amount of the land in the county. We can only steward a small amount of the land. We rely on our private landowner partners. We were able to conserve 2 miles of the Chautauqua Lake shoreline in collaborating with the state, but the other the other 40 miles of the shoreline is privately owned. And as part of that, we rely on property owners to hopefully put in waterfront buffers and be good stewards of their land and make sure that the properties are managed in a way that delivers clean water to our lakes and provides wildlife habitat. So we have a watershed stewards program that we'll talk about further. And we have 20 preserve stewards. These are volunteers who sign up to volunteer for caring for our preserves. They walk the boundaries, they look for litter, keep their eyes on it, make sure things are going well in our preserves. We have 20 preserve stewards stewarding 30 of our preserves right now, which is fantastic. This is a map of what we have conserved to date around the watershed. This is almost complete. It's out of date as of January, but it gives you some sense of the scope of where our properties are in our Chautauqua Watershed's tributary and wildlands preserve system. We have many educational programs and tours. We do watershed education, technical assistance, and pollution prevention. We use social media and traditional media to deliver our messages, to engage the public in conservation activities. We work with landowners to recover lakefronts, and we have had an ongoing program that lasted about 5 years with many partners for stream erosion control and enhancement. There were the WQIP programs with the county, the Alliance, the Soil and Water Conservation District. Our conservation, Dave Anderson, facilitated many of these projects with the landowners. Our conservation staff did publicity and education for it, and our donors made direct contributions to some of these projects to get the erosion control installed and the landscaping installed to restore them. Our preserves provide wonderful outdoor experiences around the area. And another program we ran for many years was the Lake Curriculum Program, which engaged about 3,000 students over the years which it ran. Unfortunately, due to many reasons, especially state testing, making it harder for schools to provide field trips and also budgets. This program last ran in 2019, but it was a wonderful program in Jamestown schools and other schools to get 1st through 5th and 6th graders out in the field to actually see what was living in the watershed and get to know the animals that make up the ecosystems in our watersheds. We do a lot of training. We try to keep our staff and board up to date at the forefront of conservation and biology. So we really try to make sure that we're applying the best science and bringing the best science to our organization, to those who live in our county and lead activities in our county. And with that, I would like to invite Craig Seeger, our Vice President, to say a few words.
Hello, I really thank everyone for coming. 5 years ago, I had breakfast with John Jablonski, and that pretty much defined a big chunk of my retirement for the next 5 years. This is an amazing organization. I kind of jumped in by loading up my truck, a generator, and most of the tools I own, and went out and found all these amazing volunteers that we went out and constructed kiosks, bog bridges, signs. We put up the pole for the osprey 5 years ago, and I've been waiting for 5 years for that bird to show up. And it was interesting because when the pole went up, the median age of the 7 of us that were there were 71. The kiosk, we put the poles in for that at Loomis, and that same group was there, the median age being 71. The bridge that you're looking at now was constructed by Cummins volunteers, and I would say that of any moment that I led a group or worked with groups, that was probably the most amazing, because the 8 to 10 people that helped construct that crawled out of the ravine that day. And we all sat at the top, and I gave them my spiel. I can't thank you enough. The watershed thanks you enough. And almost all at once they said, what's going on next year? We want to redo this again. And that's basically the huge difference we've seen I've seen in the past 5 years. We have participation from people that are crawling out of the woodwork. We have transformed Bentley Preserve to the point where my goal was to have it accessible and comfortably accessible for anyone from the age of 3 to 95. And I think we've succeeded in that. Dobbins Woods, John has mentioned the Stewards and the volunteers. The Samuelsons up there, Brad, Carol Samuelson, and their son, just finished about 25 bog bridges this summer. They said, bring us some materials and we'll build them. It's just a phenomenal contribution by those people. And that preserve, again, over the past 5 years, has transformed into another very comfortable walk for almost anyone to enjoy. One of the things that's interesting is since the little problem we've had with the COVID deal, the number of people on our preserves has just ballooned. Jeremy will tell you some figures, but that is another change that we've seen since we became, we opened our preserves to the public. Several years ago, a past president introduced the Gateways to Nature concept. And with the help of Cummins, a lot of these preserves you would not recognize from 4 or 5 years ago. Bridges, kiosks, etc. I think the biggest change that I've seen is the huge interest in the conservation group that I work with. We have accumulated 1,000 acres, and that group sits down and we recommend to the board what we think might be a priority project, et cetera. But to work with that group of people has been, to me, an honor. They're the smart kids that sit in the room. And they're the tree huggers and the bird nuts and the flower nuts. And they're all in one space. And if we continue like this, I'm not quite sure where we're going to be in 5 years. If we go on this level of improvement and expansion, there's really no end to it. And I thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Move on to our 2019-2020 activities report. Give you a taste of what we've been working on in the past year since the annual meeting last August. I will first call on Carol Markham and Whitney Gleason to talk about what they've been working on.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Markham, and I am the conservationist here at CWC. When my coworker Whitney Gleason and I first started at CWC in the fall of 2019, we both had a vision of an educational and personal program that we could offer to lakefront homeowners that would teach them the importance of incorporating shoreline buffers, rain gardens, and native plants into their own backyards. With this vision, we developed what is now known as the Lakescapes program. Personal at-home yard consultations that provide homeowners knowledge and guidance on how to better absorb and filter runoff, control erosion, and enhance wildlife habitat all in their own backyards. We have discussed everything from lawn care and mowing to plant identification and native plant suggestions, as well as creative ways to expand their lakefront vegetation and buffer areas. Our recommendations not only beautify their yards, but they enhance their quality of life, the lake, and the wildlife that live and thrive within it. These backyard consultations and technical assistance are free and include plant and landscape designs as well. Homeowners also have the option to receive one of our beautiful Lakescape signs to proudly display in their yards. A $30 donation is asked to help cover just the cost of the sign. The participation and success of this program has been phenomenal. We have been circling the lake from Bemis Point to Lakewood, Mayville to Jamestown, and every place in between. Homeowners have been naturalizing and lakescaping their yards and shorelines and taking pride in their personal space and improving water quality by taking ownership of their own yards, no matter where they live or what size garden they want to create. And CWC has not let COVID-19 slow them down or slow down the excitement of this new program. Thus far, we have safely visited 84 yards and proudly displayed 43 Lakescape signs in a matter of only 3 months. In between these yard consultations, we have also installed demonstration buffer gardens at Mayville Lakeside Park and Waldmere Park at Winchester Dock, and a stormwater retention pond planting at the Heritage Ministries Orchard Grove location. And we are also partnering with Chautauqua Lake Estates, Chautauqua Marina, and various homeowner associations around the lake to assist with buffer plantings and stormwater runoff issues. We hope to not only continue the program in the upcoming year, but also expand it to include all the lakes within Chautauqua County, including Bear, Finley, and Cassadaga lakes, and eventually to the shorelines of Lake Erie. Lakescapes is a wonderful way for CWC to educate, connect, and support homeowners and their communities, all the while soaking up and filtering nutrients and pollutants and protecting our lakes, 1 yard at a time. Thank you all for your support of CWC, and I hope to see you sometime in your own backyard. And next, I'm going to hand you off to my wonderful coworker, Whitney Gleason.
Thanks so much, Carol. As Becky mentioned earlier, I'm the Water Quality Program Manager. And in addition to our wonderful Lakescapes program that you just heard about, and despite the ongoing challenges of COVID, we have continued to stay actively engaged in watershed education throughout our community. Last fall, we wrapped up a successful drain marking campaign in our Lake Erie communities, as well as a Chautauqua Lake tributary sampling program, which may have involved some 2-degree water excursions by Carol with me on the bank in the snow. We've delivered PSAs across the county through fall, winter, spring, and right on through this summer. We created and distributed the immensely popular New Homeowners Guide to Lake-Friendly Living and are in the process of creating a stormwater management toolkit for distribution to municipalities, construction firms, and really whoever else would like one. This fall, just let us know if you're interested. We'd be happy to get you one when those come out. We've also delivered a number of safely, socially distanced, outdoors in person, as well as virtual education events, including a benefits of buffers and native plants presentation to the wonderful Jamestown Garden Club, an evening with Sally Cunningham discussing how our own yards can make the difference for water quality and wildlife and water life. This evening's lovely event, and finally a live presentation by the fabulous Doug Talmy, which is next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Write it down, next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. We hope that you all will join us for that. It's going to be amazing. Doug is full of knowledge. I'm ready to share that with all of us. So as you can see, we have continued to stay active. We've had a wonderful year, and we are so thankful for the support that has led to these successes. As John mentioned, as Craig mentioned, as Carol mentioned, as Becky mentioned, we can't do it without the support of our community. So we thank all of you for your support. And we really look forward to another year of engagement and education for the health of our watershed. And with that, I pass it on to the wonderful Jeremy, our lands manager.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Wilson. I'm the Conservation Lands Manager for Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. A lot of the work seems to be running now to catch whatever has happened today. There's always something going on. But most of the work that we've been doing for the last 8 months has been focused in a few general areas, a little bit more than maybe others. Of course, we've been consistently keeping up with a lot of our maintenance concerns, keeping things that need to be mowed, and keeping trails open and accessible. One of the points of emphasis has definitely been the Cassadaga Lakes Nature Park. We've been marking the trails there. We've got 2 different trail loops set up on that location now. One is ostensibly called the Easy Loop, and the other is the Middle Loop. Not very creative, but you know, if you'd like to put your name on it, feel free to donate some funds, and we'll see how that works. We've been doing a lot of work there with the Cassadaga Lakes Association. Their membership and their president, Nancy Wickmark, has really been extremely helpful in driving fundraising and getting folks out to the site to do the work. Obviously, we couldn't necessarily gather large numbers of people together all at once. So she's been really instrumental in keeping the work going in small groups, and when it's possible or reasonable to do that. This summer, summer, we started a featured trail concept. Basically, we go to one of the locations that has a trail established, assess its maintenance requirements, and then visit again to perform that maintenance and set it all up to be nice and pretty for visitors to come and walk those trails. Part of that has been installing little blue visitor sign-in boxes, which allow us to collect data about how many people are using these locations, what's the intensity of use, frequency of use, and how many novel visitors are coming there, and from how far away. So far, the locations that have these blue boxes placed include the Oxbow up on Chautauqua Creek, the Bentley Preserve that's been mentioned a number of times already here, Dobbins, also mentioned more than once, and Browns Creek and Netzger all have these sign-in boxes and trails that we've been working to maintain and make clear, so that they're easy to follow, easy to access. We'll continue to expand this notion of featured trails and visitor sign-ins for at least a few more preserves. As many as 12 locations in all will have some kind of sign-in, not necessarily all of them connected to a trailhead. Some of them are going to be connected to attractions like the kayak launch that John mentioned during his portion there. We've also been doing quite a bit of work on our GIS tools, that's Geographic Information Systems, basically using computers to collect layers of different kinds of information that can be attached geographically to the landscape of the county, that allow us to build ecological profiles, evaluate different components of the landscape in order to make better decisions about where we're going to conserve, where we're going to put in resources, or where we want to go next. A certain amount of future planning is definitely hopefully going to come out of building these tools. At this point, we can pretty much assess the ecological attributes of any parcel in the county pretty much in an afternoon. And that's what we've been working on. I think I'm back to sending this back to John now. Is that right?
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Carol, and thank you, Whitney. Let me get us back up here for, okay. One of the activities we've been doing a lot of is community technical assistance. We've been working with the Village of Lakewood and Town of Bustye on some projects the last 2 years. On the right-hand side, you can see where the underpass on Route 394 flooded a year ago in the spring. The Conservancy had already identified a stormwater project behind the Save-A-Lot Plaza in order to capture that water before it could flood the creek. I'm happy to say that that project has been recommended for funding from the county as a local match, and hopefully state funding will be applied for next year to try to build that project, which is about a 1,200 foot long created wetland stormwater system behind the plaza to stop that water from cascading down from the Grandview development and overwhelming the the stormwater system and causing flooding below. So we're working with Andy Johnson Eco Strategies on that project. We're also working on another project in Lakewood. Just to the right of that area is a stormwater basin that we are getting a design for to refurbish it so it actually stores water and reduces soil erosion and downstream. And we're hoping to get these projects done so that would significantly reduce the sedimentation from those two streams going into the waters in front of Lakewood. Also this year we worked with Chautauqua Lake Estates. A member identified a problem, an erosion problem, and the Conservancy got involved in within a matter of about a month. We worked with the town of Chautauqua and Chautauqua Lake Estates, and a sedimentation basin was constructed in order to replace what you see on the left and stop that so that that won't be happening anymore. That water coming down the hill will be treated and held, and any sediment will be trapped in this basin before it going out to the lake, which is just on the other side of these trees. We're also working with the town of North Harmony on a couple of projects to try to deal with lake sedimentation problems and erosion problems in Ball Creek. So a lot going on with the towns and villages, and we hope to continue that in the future for to arrest erosion and intercept nutrients before they get to the lake to fuel our lake's algae and plant problems. Currently, right now, we have several projects that we're working on. We have a 10-acre wetland site in the uplands of Mud Creek, upstream from Chautauqua Lake, that we're working to conserve. We're working to conserve a 50-acre forest on Cheney Creek. We're working to conserve additional land at both the Oxbow Preserve on Chautauqua Creek and also at our Solomon Preserve, working with landowners there to expand the size of the protected lands at those sites. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy is also working on larger projects that we're seeking major givers and lead givers to help us with, and partners. There's a big site available on Prendergast Creek that has severely eroding stream banks, and we hope to raise the funds and have a campaign to conserve that site and heal the banks and make it a healthy trout stream, which it should be. We are working with a farmer and Soil and Water on a farm on Mud Creek to hopefully acquire a permanent conservation easement on the stream and deal with the erosion there permanently. And also a similar site on Goose Creek as well to try to deal with severe erosion and stop that silt and clay from leaving those banks and going down to Chautauqua Lake, where it provides a fertile rooting bed for plants to grow. We are working on the conservation of the mouth of Chautauqua Creek. We worked with the town of Chautauqua several years ago, which ultimately acquired the land that you see here on the left with the fishermen, and we are presently working on developing a campaign to conserve the 14 acres at the mouth of the creek on the right. So we are looking for lead givers to help us accomplish these projects so that we can save these really important ecological sites in the future. Conservancy is a not-for-profit organization. We're not a government agency. We rely on you, families, individuals, and family foundations to fund a majority of this work. We are your land trust organization, where your investment in a small organization has major impacts to keep the region a refuge for families, fish, and wildlife for generations to come. Looking forward to the next 10 years, we hope to develop a countywide conservation strategy that we would implement, which would include stream corridors, wetlands, steep slopes, and large blocks of forests and special habitats. We hope to restore as much forest and wetland acreage as possible to absorb and filter heavy precipitation and storm events to prevent erosion, sedimentation, and nutrient pollution. We want to conserve those habitats which are most valuable and sensitive across the region. And we want to conserve forests and improve forests to absorb carbon dioxide. We hope to make sure that you, as our donors, can contribute to fighting climate change by contributing to the Conservancy for us to conserve forests that we have and restore forests that are no longer, that were converted to other uses, to bring those back to forest land in the coming years. We hope to creatively partner with landowners and donors and other organizations to undertake large acreage projects that are really going to contribute to maintaining the water quality of our waterways in the long term. We want to responsibly manage and maintain and defend our conservation lands. We have a commitment to all of you who fund us to make sure that these properties are carefully and responsibly managed. And we want to improve access to preserves for you, the public, where those preserves are suitable and the ecology of the site can handle it. We are hoping to expand the Lakescapes program that Carol talked about county-wide in coming years. There's interest beyond Chautauqua Lake, and we hope to be able to meet that demand. We hope to engage landowners to return their lands to forest, and we hope to engage landowners to minimize use of pesticides that kill pollinators and other beneficial organisms in the food web. Pesticides and herbicides can do a lot of damage when they're not properly used, and so we hope to continue educating people in that realm as well. We have the audacious responsibility to care for your conservation lands in perpetuity. And how do we do that? We want to strengthen our donor support. We want to undertake an effective plan giving program, and we want to grow endowment funds to at least $5 million over the next 10 years so that we can responsibly manage and defend these lands in perpetuity long after all of us are gone. So with that, I would invite anyone to write questions. We'll take a few questions written into the question and answer box, and then we will go to our featured speaker.
No. No.
Pardon?
We have our election next, John.
Oh, sorry. Where's my agenda?
And a financial report before that. So.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So we'll get to Erik in just a few minutes. I think what we'll do is go ahead because it's getting a wee bit late. So if people have questions, please put them in the Q&A box if you have them. And we can work on having some answers for you after Erik does his presentation. Maybe we can also answer any questions that are general for John. But I think for now, we need to move on to the financial report, and I'm going to ask Bob Wooler, our treasurer, to please give us that report. Take it away, Bob.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Bob Wooler. I'm the treasurer of the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. I've been serving in that role for the past year. So tonight I'd like to offer a quick snapshot of where the Conservancy is financially, followed by a couple of thoughts about the implications and lessons learned from the interesting times that we're in and some of the challenges that shape up ahead of us. But first, the finances. Our most recent audited financials that reflect the period through September 30th, 2019 show a picture of really great financial health, all things considered. The organization has net assets of $2,775,475, which is an increase of about $300,000 over the previous year. About 25% of that amount is in cash, and 3/4 of it is in land. The cash balance is enough for 18 months of normal operating expenses. And to put that in context, in the nonprofit world, an organization that has 6 months of operating expenses in the bank is considered healthy and doing well. So we consider ourselves blessed, to have that kind of cushion and, the freedom and creativity that it allows for being able to measure up to the challenges that we have. Last year, the year ended September 30th, 2019, the CWC had an operating surplus of almost $290,000 and on a total of $725,000 in total revenue. So this year to date, somewhat different, this being a challenging year given the pandemic and COVID and the inability to raise funds through events and some of the things that we've typically done, but we're doing okay. The Conservancy shows an operating surplus of about $8,000 through 10 months of operation or through July 31st. So we're holding our own and hoping for the best going forward. But I have a couple of thoughts about that, just, as we look to the future and do so in light of the history that's been described and all the accomplishments over the past 3 decades, as well as the big projects that John just outlined that lie ahead of us and we hope to make progress with. So one of the first issues is the importance of external and unplanned factors. Sometimes you just never know what lies ahead. And so that's certainly illustrated by the issue of bequests. So a significant bequest made all the difference for the CWC last year. And while you obviously can't plan for these, they are most certainly the fruits of positive, long-term, solid relationships with donors. And they make a huge difference when they happen. And so they happened for CWC last year. And when they do, it makes all the difference. So that's one thing. And certainly the next, in terms of external and unplanned events is the pandemic. So it took away revenue that we normally count on from events, our golf tournament, which is a signature fundraising event, as well as a number of other things. And we had a number of them planned given the 30th anniversary. But we substituted the federal Paycheck Protection Program loan for that, which should be forgiven and allow those funds to come in and replace some of the funds that would have been raised through events. So all things considered, we find ourselves in a fortunate position at this point, just given, that external and unplanned things do happen. We've been able to be resilient around it and find our way forward. But nevertheless, the second thing I want to mention is the caution light is on going forward. So as John has just outlined, 2 out of every $3 of revenue for the Conservancy comes through private donations. So we depend a lot on our individual donors and on foundations, corporations, and the private sector for what we do. And we're well aware that the COVID-19 pandemic has created a lot of social dislocation in our communities. The unemployment rate is high. The social needs will be intense. The competing needs for dollars and how they'll be spent and the demands on individuals will be significant going forward. We don't know how that's going to pan out, but we know that we're doing our best to live up to our mission, the importance of it, conserving land, taking on significant projects going forward and trying to measure up to the challenges of climate change and what that's bringing in terms of changes to the area as well. So we're hoping for the best as we look to changes in private giving. And we also know that government funding is taking a wallop at all levels, just given what's happening with tax revenues and how that will be playing out. So the path forward there is uncertain, despite our goals and our resilience, and we hope to be able to achieve them in a variety of ways. We know that we'll have to be at the top of our game going forward to do so. So I thank you for the opportunity to just talk a few minutes about our finances, and now let's move on with our agenda.
Thanks, Bob. That was very insightful and very informational. We really appreciate what you do. I now have the pleasure to ask Bob again and Craig Seeger, who are members of our Board Development Committee and our Nominating Committee, to present the slate of candidates for our new additions of board members to our Watershed Conservancy. So Bob and Craig, please take it away again.
Okay, thank you, Becky. So on behalf of the Nominating Task Force, I would like to offer a motion to nominate the following. For a term expiring in 2021, Nan Doolittle. For a term expiring in 2022, Chris Flanders. And for terms expiring in 2023, Cheryl Mawhinney, Rich Morrisroe, Lisa Schmidt-Frerick Miller, Greg Swan, and Ruth Wall. So that's the slate. Is there a second?
Craig, where are you?
Sorry, I'm back now. I second that. Nice job, Bob.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor of the slate of nominees as presented, a ballot has just popped up. So if you could indicate yes, that would be much appreciated.
Or nay, if you, but yeah, yes, of course.
Okay, so thank you for doing that. Looks like the yays have it on that. The slate is adopted, and we welcome the new nominees, and we thank you for your participation.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Thanks, nominating committee. Thanks, Bob and Craig. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and John, we'll ask you to introduce our guest speaker, Erik Kulleseid, and look forward to learning a lot from Erik, as we'll soon see. You're muted.
Becky, I'd like to introduce Erik Kulleseid, who was appointed Commissioner of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation in 2019. Previously, he was the Senior Vice President for the Open Space Institute, where he co-founded the Parks Program and helped secure $30 million for park improvements. And from 2007 to 2010, he was the Deputy Commissioner for Open Space Protection at State Parks. He was the New York State Program Director for the Trust for Public Land, and he is a graduate of Yale College, Stanford Law School, and Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. So with that, I thank you for coming and addressing us tonight, Erik.
Thanks, John. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, great. So I don't know about anyone else on this call, but that presentation was both, the work that the Conservancy has done is both exhausting and inspiring, right? But I think we all know in this group that there's no room for exhaustion, right? We have to work. It's only the tireless work that we do that makes the conservation happen, right? I mean, 30 years, the Conservancy has an amazing record of accomplishment. And obviously, the whole purpose of tonight is to make sure there's another 30 years, 90 years, 180 years, whatever it takes to get what you need to get done. So it's an honor to be here tonight to congratulate the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy on its 30th anniversary. I have to say, for me, I look at my gray hair and I'm like, oh yeah, how time has flown by. It seems literally only yesterday that I was working with John and Becky and the Conservancy as a junior project manager at the Trust for Public Land to conserve portions of the Cheney waterfront, the Cheney farm on Lake Chautauqua, which is now obviously part of a over 100-acre wildlife management area. Think back to 1990, back to 1994, right? The state's Environmental Protection Fund was brand new. There's a new governor who wasn't clear what he was going to, what his calling card was going to be. And was he going to be interested in a whole new swath of state land in southwestern New York? But by golly, we put it through, and the Cheneys, I'm sure all of you know well, are an interesting and complex family to work with, and it took a lot of high finance. As I recall, I think we had to purchase a mortgage on the Cheney farm in order to get that acquisition to happen. But it was a great time, and I think the Conservancy has a great history, and those were some of the formative years of my career. So I look back at them with a lot of fondness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I'm going to share my screen, and I can't do these conversations without promoting my brand, the New York State Park System. So I'm going to talk a little bit through that. Talk a little bit about the specifics of the agency in the Chautauqua and our Allegheny region in particular, which is obviously comprises Chautauqua County, Cassadaga County, and Allegheny County. And then I thought I'd talk about partnerships and then some of the work actually we're doing in the capital side that are relevant to Chautauqua Lake, Lake Chautauqua. You know what? I've never, ever in 30 years been able to remember whether it was Lake Chautauqua or Chautauqua Lake. So I'm sorry if I flip back and forth during this. So I'm going to share my screen right here, and hopefully that's going to give me a chance to show this. Let's see how it works. Oh, there you go. Obviously, looking at a photo of Allegheny State Park, the Red House area, which is one of our flagship parks, just east of you all. So Oh, hold on, do I just click to move forward? There we go. So I think it's always useful to talk about the superlatives of the state park system. You know, we are the second largest park system in the country. We're the fourth largest state population-wise, but we are very big in the state park system. We're first in the number of facilities, first in the number of campsites, second in visitation, and top 3 in total acreage. People don't always think this way, but you know, there are more people go to Niagara Falls than go to Grand Canyon, Yosemite, and more people go to Jones Beach on Long Island than visit Yellowstone in Wyoming. We are heavily into facilities. As you can see here, we have 250 parks and facilities, 350,000 acres, which obviously is not nearly, it's only about 1/10 the size of the DEC. But we are organized around visitors and annual visitors. And this 74 million is actually off by a year. We're actually up to 77 million in last year, 2019. I'll show you some trends we've had in there. We have 5,000 buildings, 26 golf courses, swimming pools, beaches, marinas, boat launches, nature centers, cabins. It is a big list of items that we support in order to give the public lots of options when they come into our parks. We also have big bridges and roads if people don't think about it. Obviously, when you think about the recreational activities we offer, there's camping. We actually, not everybody knows that we oversee safe boating and snowmobiling in the state, you know, for the state's 10,000 miles of snowmobiling. We are golf, nature centers, and of course we are trails, 2,000 miles connecting with our own lands, private land trust lands, and of course DEC lands. In the Allegheny region, and someone someday will have to tell me why in New York we spell Allegheny with a G-A as opposed to Pennsylvania where it's G-H-E. We won't do it tonight, but good to know someday. So we have 7 parks in our Allegheny region. Many of them, they're all except for one are in Allegheny and Cattaraugus and Chautauqua counties. Long Point, which obviously is on the lake, Midway State Park on the lake, Lake Erie and Barcelona and Sunset Bay are on Lake Erie, and then obviously our flagship Allegheny State Park is in fact the largest state park in the state, 65,000 acres, with, as many of you know, it is really built to be, you know, it's like a camping resort. It's phenomenal. You know, I'm in awe sometimes when I think about that on an evening in the summer when we are full at Allegheny. We can have 30,000 people in Allegheny State Park. Think about it, it's like a small city just in that one park. Just looking at kind of the trends of the past few years, obviously under Governor Cuomo, who came into office in 2011 with Commissioner Harvey, who, just as an aside, was my former boss at the Trust for Public Lands. So the Trust for Public Lands got a nice legacy of state parks. Was successful in starting up a program that we called New York Parks 2020. In 2010, the park system was in terrible shape. And we were documenting $1 billion backlog in capital projects. We'd done an awful lot of great land acquisition. I think we bought some 35,000 acres during the Pataki administration, but we're really faced with crumbling infrastructure. Fortunately, Governor Cuomo has really put his money where his mouth is, and we've been able to spend, I'll go to the next thing, but our goals in of this program have really been to bring our flagship parks back up to speed. You know, Niagara Falls ought to be an impressive place. It ought to be a place where people don't say it's shabby and underfinanced, which the New York Times said in 2011. But we're promoting recreation, connecting people, rejuvenating the world-class parks, but also thinking today about the natural environment. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, right? We are a player in the environmental sector, the ecological sector, and obviously we're always very aware that we are vital to many local economies. So really the highlights of the last 10 years in Parks 2020 is that we have invested $1 billion, 200 parks have been improved, a lot of our flagships have been addressed, 900 projects completed, 900 projects completed. This is an agency that before 2011 had an annual capital budget of $14 million, right? So we've scaled up by nearly tenfold and done amazing work in supporting our park system. That's all really thanks to Governor Cuomo and his vision and his understanding that, you know, if we invest in parks, you're going to get results. Much of that, and this is sort of relevant to the Conservancy, is we have done a lot with private sector partners. We have lots of friends groups and other partners out there, others grantees, federal grants, other things to help us get this work done. This work is, a lot of it is not sexy. It is infrastructure. We are, you know, we've had aging road systems, aging power systems, aging water treatment systems. It seemed like everything was really requiring an upgrade, and that is a lot of what we've been focusing on the last 10 years. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these, a couple of these projects later on, but we are obviously spending money in the Allegheny region as well, 25 million in capital investment, and that is, you know, obviously a bit of that, a big chunk of that has gone into Allegheny, but there's an awful lot that's come into Chautauqua County as well, and we'll get into that in a second. And this is the major phenomenon of the last 10 years, is that, you know, visitation, this is one of those things where if you build it and you pay attention, they come. Our visitation has gone up 33% in the last 10 years, from 58 million in 2011 to 77 million last year. And I thought it was interesting to hear the comment earlier that about visitation to the Conservancy's parks. Our visitation also this year, we are running ahead of last year, and that's actually, for us, you know, in our beaches and in a lot of our destination parks, we've actually kept, we've limited density. We've limited the parking in our parking lots, our beaches. Many of our destination sites are only allowed to get half full, and yet still, because of visitation in March, April, and May, when we don't see that many people typically, and during the week, our visitation has gone through the roof. Obviously, I'll go through this. We are an economic driver across the state, and particularly upstate. One thing I think is relevant to you all programmatically, and is that in the last 3 years, we have a new program called Connect Kids, which is actually available to school districts. Really, it's generally available to any school district that has a Title I, school in it. And through that, we've been able to get $300,000. We've been able to pay for busing or other transportation and programming work for school groups that want to come and do work in a state park or a state forest. And it's been, you can see, we've awarded 215 of those transportation or other grants, transportation and programming grants in the Allegheny region. You know, obviously a big chunk of what we're trying to talk about tonight is partnership. And you know, we can't get what we get done without partners. And, you know, we're going to talk about, you know, the Conservancy is a particular kind of partner. You know, there's advocacy, there's a lot of outreach. You all have laid a lot of groundwork. You've built kind of momentum in your community for land conservation and for watershed conservation. We have other programs, you know, where we look at our friends groups who are huge to us. You know, we are a big agency, but we are still strapped financially. We're strapped in terms of programming. We need our friends groups and volunteers and conservancies to help us provide, you know, enhance our visitor experience, make it high quality, help us reach new populations to enjoy our parks. And then even in many cases, as you know, doing capital projects is really a lot of the same things that we get out of our friends groups. In the you know, in the Allegheny region, obviously we've got 3 major friends groups, 2 at Allegheny, which are really focused right now on restoration and also thinking about the 100th anniversary of that park, which is in 2021. But obviously in the along Chautauqua Lake, we have the Friends of Midway have done you know, amazing things for us. I mean, that is Midway obviously is like unlike any other park in our system. It was bought in 2006, again, with the support and advocacy of the Conservancy. It is, I can't tell you how, you know, what a challenge it has been to learn how to run a historic amusement park, but it has been, we are doing it. And I'll tell you, the Friends of Midway have been great. They've helped us raise support for the carousel, and the refurbishment there, the put around, and then the rehabilitation of 2 period rides that were purchased. We've become somewhat of we surf the internet for opportunities to buy historic rides that we've been bringing into Midway. And Midway, and this is the kind of stuff that we can't do by ourselves. You know, we are not experts in this, and so having the support of Dalton Burgett, who's the chair of our Allegheny Park Commission, and I don't know if Jay Bailey's on this call, but Jay Bailey, our regional director, have worked together closely to sort of support that. It is really because it is a park unlike any other in our system, and as you well know, it's a park that still needs some tender loving care. You know, we have that great hippodrome that we have to figure out. You know, would love to be able to figure out a long-term use for that facility. So that's the presentation. I'm now going to, how do I get out of this? I stop my share, just put myself on the screen again. So, you know, I'm not going to go through, John has obviously talked through any of the acquisition projects that you've all done that have been, in which the state of New York has participated. For me, obviously, it was a project that's near and dear to my heart, really one of the projects I worked on, which was the acquisition of that first piece of the Cheney farm. I feel like that was a catalytic project for it started you down, it helped you moved down the road, helped you gain momentum, helped bring the DEC focus. It was a great project for me when I was at the Trust for Public Land. Obviously, we are supporting Cassadaga. We've given you a grant for that. You know, over time, we've invested, you know, more than $9.7 million in regional projects, and I don't have to relist, but you know, some of those are ones that the Conservancy worked on. But we have Midway, and then Barcelona Lighthouse and Lake Erie fairly recently. We've just expanded our work at Barcelona Lighthouse to make that more accessible over there on the Lake Erie shoreline. And then, you know, and I think it's important for us that, you know, people think of us as you know, we are a parks agency, but as I said, we are a conservation agency, and it is important for us that you are doing what you do, because if you don't do what you do, you know, our landscapes are not going to be the kind of places where people can still recreate, because we've got to have clean air and clean water, and we own land, and then we have to be a piece of that. So I think that we've done a few things, and there are big issues. There's there's still issues that need to be addressed at Chautauqua. For instance, you know, we've invested $1.1 million at Long Point State Park on the lake to replace our on-site treatment system with the connections to the municipal sewer system. That obviously reduces inputs to the lake. There's now, you know, we're now routing hundreds of thousands of gallons of wastewater into the sewer district instead of you know, putting that treated effluent in the lake. As many of you know, Long Point has been unfortunately the site of HABs in the past, you know, harmful algal blooms in the last couple of years, but we are now a host site for an innovative HAB program by the Army Corps of Engineers to remove those algal blooms. The prototype, what we call habitat system, will hopefully work to skim the algae from the water, converting it into products including biofuel. We're excited to see if this can help us improve that water quality, because those HABs are just, you know, it's the latest scourge, right? I mean, obviously the latest scourge that seems to be hitting lakes across, you know, across the country. We have, at the same time that we are, and obviously the lake is critical because it provides drinking water, right? So we've got to keep up that work. We are also continuing to acquire in-holdings at Allegheny. One of the most important things we've had to do at Allegheny is purchase mineral rights. You know, when we got that park, a lot of those gas rights were still, and many are still privately owned, but we've been trying to retire those to protect that, because that's an important 60,000 acre parcel of land that needs to be protected. And then I think also it's not really our program, but the conservation, you know, I speak a little bit for DEC. I'm glad to see the Conservancy using the Conservation Partnership Program funds. You know, I was, you know, when I was at the Open Space Institute and at the Trust for Public Land, I was a member of the community, and those grants, as I can, you know, as you all know, have done it's not a big grant program. It's a couple $1 million a year statewide. And, I don't know what the number of land trusts is, 75, 100, but, I don't know what it is right now. But those small grants, as you know, right, are so catalytic, right? It's often lead funding. It's the kind of funding that helps you build momentum and get projects, get capacity building. And I think I've seen that you've actually gotten a number of grants through that program that have helped you kind of build the organization to what it is today. And it's a program unlike any other in the country. It's an incredibly unique and special program that we in New York need to keep going. It's just so vital because our land trusts just provide us with so much. Even the state, right? The state gets back way more than it puts into that program. So you look at what you've done, and it's an amazing 30-year record of accomplishment. Just an amazing 30-year record of accomplishment, right? And I give you all, it's one thing I have to say, and I give you all incredible credit because you look at Long Island or the Lower Hudson Valley, and there the kind of conservation community is huge and it's kind of very entrenched. But think of the Conservancy. I think conservation was kind of a new thing in the 90s in Chautauqua County, and you all had a vision. You saw an opportunity. You saw a need. You were willing to import a concept and to start something that who knew whether you'd be successful, right? And there's still, the conservation community still today has challenges, right? There are people who think that it's taking away development rights or that it's taking property off the tax rolls. People don't always see the value. It's an endless fight. It's an endless fight what you do, and I just give you credit. But obviously, you're not done yet. Just guess that. Just don't no relaxing now. It is still water quality. I'm looking at the 2016 open space plan, right? And it still identifies Lake Chautauqua. There's water quality issues stemming from activities on the tributaries that need to be addressed by easement and acquisition to prevent riparian and upland habitat, such as the headwaters, right? That is still true. And so you have lots and lots of work to do. I just want to thank John Jablonski for actually being such a great partner to me. Becky Nystrom for our time that we've had. I haven't been out there in a while, but it was an amazing time when we got all this going. Thank you for your work on the Open Space Committee, right? For making sure that Chautauqua County and that watershed has been represented there. And keep going after those tributaries. Keep making it work. Don't stop now. And say hi to Dalton Burgett if you see him. But anyway, just congratulations on 30 years and really best of luck and all good fortune as you launch into the future and protect that precious lake, because Chautauqua Lake is a precious, precious place. And I'll never forget the first time, that all the, you come over the highway, whatever, you come off the highway, or you come off the road or the overlook that got built finally. It's a stunning place. It's sort of an unexpected, vast body of water that just is kind of breathtaking as you come into it. You should never forget how special a place it is and how important it is, the work that you're doing there. So that's it, just to let you go.
Wow. Well, thank you, Erik. That was a wonderful presentation. It's great to see how all the different groups, agencies, organizations, not-for-profits, and all of the rest are working together. I think everybody understands how important open space is, green space, protecting these incredible natural gifts that we have in our midst, and that we need to work together to continue to see things happen. I don't know if we have any questions for you, Erik. I'm looking at the question Q&A box, and it doesn't appear that there are any. John, do you have anything you want to say here?
I just love to thank Erik for participating. Yeah, it's a shame that you couldn't be here in person. I certainly invite you to come back next summer and come out and see our parks in this end of this part of the state. And we really appreciate all the support of the Parks Department that we've gotten over the 30 years to accomplish big things on Chautauqua Lake.
One comment for Erik, please take care of my Allegheny forest. I spent so much time there that days and weeks. Take care of it for me. Thank you very, very much.
And I appreciate it. I guess it's worth just saying one more thing. Allegheny State Park wouldn't be there were it not for the effort of a leading group of Buffalonians, right? Who said that, they observed the genesis of our whole park system is private energy, right? You have big parks in the Hudson Valley, Rockefeller State Park Preserve, Harriman State Park. These are all places named because of the families or the leading institutions, or in Buffalo's case, it was actually a group of Buffalonians. Letchworth Park, all these places are there because someone cared an awful lot to get it done. And so keep it up. We can't stop.
More important than ever now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, again, thank you, Erik, and thank you to everybody who's come tonight to participate in our virtual meeting. There are a few comments in the chat box. We'll try to get back to you because of the late hour. I think we won't try to take any additional time right now, but we will try to get back to you and answer those questions. Just a reminder about the Doug Tallamy program that's going to be really cool, coming up September 1st on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. It is a virtual webinar, and you can sign up through our email blasts, our Facebook page, on our website. But here's the title: A Guide to Restoring the Little Things That Run the World. And that is really what matters. These little things fuel the forests and clean the water, and the pollinators and the native plants and all of these things. It's all connected. It'll be a wonderful program. So please join us. It's free, and it's going to be wonderful. Chemical-free lawn care, native plants and insects. We also hope to do some future preserve walks. So stay tuned with our email blasts, our Facebook page, and our website. We're kind of waiting for COVID to settle down, but we'll see what happens in the fall. And we just want to thank everybody again for all of the support. Thanks for all of you hanging with us here for this very long annual meeting. We really appreciate you being here. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your financial help when you can do it. And we encourage you to get out on our trails, get out on the parks trails that Erik was talking about. But get out and enjoy and renew and refresh your spirit, your mind, your body, because that's what nature does. And the more we can all help understand and protect and know these places, the more we'll want to make sure that they're there in the future for, as we say, in perpetuity. Thank you again, and we hope everybody will have a safe rest of their year. And thank you again for joining us tonight. I think I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Craig's moved. All right. Thanks again to everybody. Have a wonderful night and stay in touch, and we'll try to get back to you as well.
Thank you, Becky.
Bye, guys.